Before we begin, I must emphasize that viewer discretion is advised. This story is one that will keep you on the edge of your seat, full of raw emotion and powerful confrontations. What unfolds here is not just another celebrity interview, it's a pivotal moment in live television that shakes the very foundation of daytime broadcasting. Prepare yourself for a moment that will leave you questioning the world of media, entertainment, and what it truly means to stand your ground. This is the unforgettable day Blake Shelton walked onto The View, only to find himself in the crosshairs of one of the most outspoken and controversial hosts in American television, Joy Behar. What began as a simple promotional appearance turned into one of the most explosive live confrontations in television history. A clash between two worldviews that escalated quickly, leaving millions of viewers glued to their screens, picking sides, and watching as Hollywood polish gave way to an unfiltered, raw truth. The story begins on a bright morning, with the studio lights of The View blinding the audience as they eagerly await another lively episode. The familiar faces and the well-rehearsed routine of the crew set the stage for what should have been a pleasant, uneventful celebrity segment. Blake Shelton, the country music superstar and beloved coach on The Voice, was scheduled to promote his latest album and discuss his upcoming tour. A quick chat about his career, some jokes about his role on The Voice, maybe a nod to his new album and a plug for the show. Nothing out of the ordinary. Blake entered the studio, his trademark confident swagger radiating from every step. He tipped his cowboy hat to the cheering audience, flashing that familiar million-dollar smile that had appeared on countless magazine covers, and settled into the guest chair with the relaxed posture of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. The crowd responded with enthusiastic applause, their cheers genuine, as Blake, America's sweetheart of country music, had become one of the most recognizable faces in entertainment. The other hosts greeted Blake warmly. Whoopi Goldberg, always professional, welcomed him with a cheerful smile. Sarah Haynes beamed brightly, obviously excited to meet the country star. Even Sunny hosts seemed delighted to have Blake on set, exchanging pleasantries as they all moved into the soft, easy banter that was typical of morning television. The audience relaxed into their seats, feeling the easy rhythm of the conversation unfold. For the next few minutes, Blake answered questions about his music, his role on The Voice, and life in Nashville. There were a few laughs, a couple of lighthearted moments, and everything appeared to be going exactly as expected. A perfect segment that would make the public smile. But then, something changed. The cameras panned across the table, catching the change in the atmosphere, and then there was Joy Behar. She sat in her chair, unusually quiet, watching Blake with a smile that wasn't exactly warm. To anyone who had watched The View long enough, it was a familiar look. The look of someone who was about to launch an attack. The moment the tension was palpable, it was clear that this wasn't going to be the simple conversation Blake was expecting. As the others continued their friendly back and forth, Joy leaned forward slightly, her voice cutting through the casual air with an icy precision. "Well," she said, that trademark smile now curling at the edges of her lips. "Look who decided to grace us with his presence." Blake raised an eyebrow, his eyes momentarily narrowing. The warning signs were there, but he hadn't yet fully recognized the trap she was setting. "Good morning to you too, Joy," Blake replied, still maintaining a friendly, professional tone, but with an unmistakable edge of caution that now hung in the air. "Always a pleasure to be here with you, lovely ladies." But Joy wasn't playing by the rules of typical daytime banter. "Cut the charm," she shot back, waving her hand dismissively as she leaned in, eager to engage in something far more serious. "Let's talk about your recent comments about small-town values," she said. "You seem to think that living in a small town automatically makes someone more moral, more patriotic than the rest of us city dwellers." The studio, once warm and welcoming, suddenly turned cold. The tension was thick, so thick you could almost touch it. The audience, once upbeat, was now uneasy, their excitement replaced by palpable discomfort. The other hosts exchanged quick, nervous glances, unsure of how to react. Whoopi, ever the professional, attempted to steer the conversation back towards safer territory, but Joy was already committed to her path. Blake, his Oklahoma drawl thickening as he responded, remained composed, trying to diffuse the situation. "I never said that, Joy," he explained, his voice calm but firm. "What I said was that small towns teach you certain values. Community, helping your neighbors, working hard for what you have. I didn't say anything about being better than anyone else." Joy wasn't having it. She waved him off once again, her dismissive tone growing sharper. "Oh, please, that's exactly what you implied." she retorted. You country music stars love to paint yourselves as the real Americans, while the rest of us are… What? Fake Americans? We're just as American as you are, Blake. Blake's posture shifted slightly. His hands, once resting casually on the armrests, tightened. His jaw clenched, but he maintained control. Joy, I think you're putting words in my mouth that I never said, he responded, his voice steady but carrying an unmistakable hint of frustration. I respect people from all walks of life, whether they're from New York City or from a town with 3,000 people. Joy, still leaning forward, wasn't about to back down. Do you, though? She pressed, her voice gaining momentum. Because your music, your whole persona, it's built on this idea that real America is somewhere out in the heartland. And places like New York, places like where I grew up somehow don't count. The room had grown heavy. Every person in the studio was now acutely aware that this wasn't just a typical celebrity interview. What had started as a light conversation had quickly turned into a standoff. Blake's normally easygoing demeanor was shifting, just slightly, but enough to show the world that he wasn't going to sit back and let this slide. Joy, I don't know where you're coming from, Blake responded, his voice now tinged with annoyance. I sing about my life, about the values that I grew up with. That's not about claiming to be better than anyone. It's about being proud of where I'm from. But Joy, ever the provocateur, pushed harder. But your whole brand is built on this mythology of simple country folk versus sophisticated city people. It's divisive, Blake, and frankly, it's getting old. Her words were sharp, designed to sting, and they landed exactly where she wanted them. Blake's jaw tightened. The calm, professional mask he'd worn for most of the interview began to crack. His voice rose slightly, his southern charm slipping for just a moment. Joy, he said, his tone now firmly controlled but undeniably intense. Just because someone becomes successful doesn't mean they forget where they come from. I'm proud of where I'm from. Proud enough to exploit it for profit? Joy was quick to fire back. You've been living in Hollywood and Nashville for decades, Blake. When was the last time you actually lived in one of these small towns you're always singing about? Blake stood. It wasn't an accidental move. His frame, already imposing at 6'5", seemed to grow even larger, more commanding. The entire dynamic of the conversation shifted with that single act. You know what, Joy? He said, his voice measured but unyielding. I may live in Nashville now, but I haven't forgotten where I come from. I grew up in Ada, Oklahoma. Population 12,000. My dad worked construction, my mom owned a beauty shop. I know what it's like to grow up in a place where everybody knows everybody. The tension in the room was palpable. Everyone knew something big was happening now. The other hosts were caught off guard, unsure of how to intervene. The studio was silent, holding its collective breath. Joy, however, was determined to press on. And now you're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Don't you think it's a little disingenuous to keep playing this common man card? Blake's smile, the one that had charmed America for years, faded completely. In its place was something harder, colder. You think I'm lying about who I am? Blake's voice, now rising, was filled with a new level of steel. Just because I'm successful doesn't mean I've forgotten where I come from. Joy, still confident, leaned back in her chair. You've built your entire career on a lie, she said, a smirk curling at the corners of her lips. On this fake, idealized version of small-town life. Blake's shoulders stiffened, his body language rigid with frustration. You're wrong, he said, his voice quiet but carrying a deep authority. I don't lie about my success. I don't hide where I came from. And I don't pretend to be anything I'm not. But you're sitting here throwing stones, pretending to have the moral high ground, and you don't even understand the people you're attacking. The studio grew eerily silent. Joy, now flushed with anger, gripped the edge of the table in front of her. How dare you? She whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of fury and disbelief. Blake, his gaze never leaving hers, remained calm. You haven't challenged me, Joy. You've attacked me, and I'm done with it. With that, Blake stood taller, his presence growing even more powerful, and made his way toward the exit, leaving Joy Behar and the rest of the panel in stunned silence. The audience sat frozen, their mouths agape. The camera held steady on Joy, who stood there, her face a mix of shock, humiliation, and anger, unable to process what had just happened. Blake Shelton had made his exit, and with it, left an indelible mark on The View, on live television, and on the millions of viewers who would never forget what they had witnessed.